Hello, everybody. I am here with Dylan, and we are going to speak about Gene Key or Gate 55. And Dylan, that is your life's work or your personality sun. So it's your birthday this week, and welcome here with me to speak about how it is to have this Gene Key in your chart and in your life.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bella. Really like what you're doing with the 64 doors and honored to be here. And yep, I'm going, towards my 30th birthday in 2 days. Crazy.
And you are 4'6", so we can also say that for you, it has probably been a lot of trial and error with this 55, and even the whole activation sequence or incarnation cross with the 55, the 57, the 34, and the 20. So that cross of the sleeping phoenix has been kind of busy making trial and error. So do you feel, we say for 4'6"s that is the first 28 years, but do you feel like you kind of are going up on the roof out of that cycle, or where do you feel that you are in terms of the trial and error and the going up on the roof?
Yeah, so obviously as a 4-6, I have the 6-line body, and I feel, interestingly, more towards the tail end of so 28 and a half, I really did feel something shifting, but right at that point, I was like, oh, it's happening. I'm going on the roof. I'm going on the roof. And it was like, no, you're going to have to go through the most intense time of trial and error before you actually get up there. And I had an amazing 2 years of doing things I had never done before, showing up as a more real person than I ever had, and kind of taking my work to the next level. But then there was a lot of trial and error with relationships and alliances. And as I approached 30, my Saturn return actually fell on January 1st, 2020, which was a crazy thing to realize. I just had Saturn kind of come through and just sweep all of my relationships. And
Oh,
literally within a week, I had a lot of energy leave my life. And so since that January 1st moment, it's really felt more like I've been on the roof, and I've been more kind of withdrawn from the busyness of networking and connecting and wanting to be open. And it's changed my just my even willingness to, I think, be around people as much. And I've much more connected to just energy and life as a whole, as a holistic picture and as a living, breathing experience, and been less about really even caring about achievement or ambition. That kind of whole drive has changed. So I'm still feeling it out, but I definitely have noticed a shift in my perspective. And I've obviously read a lot about what this shift might look like or feel like. And for me, really activating that 6th line has almost, even though I feel like I've taken a step back from life, it's allowed me to see everything, like the agenda of the other, much more clearly. So it's been really fascinating to see things within other people that I wasn't aware of before, because I was in that more subjective 3rd line, um, maybe more willing to play along with their game in that 3rd line sense.
mm.
And it feels very comforting. Like I feel very relaxed. I feel very serene. I feel very just happy to be alive for no reason. And that's a great feeling.
Right. It's interesting too that you're saying this thing about the proving or about the worthiness. You have a completely open will center. So that could be something too that, we say that those are kind of curses or blessing. I even heard that, you could say that that's something in other incarnations that you already worked through. So you don't have any activations in that center anymore. So I'm thinking also when trial and error is over, maybe the genius of the completely open center is suddenly there. And then you don't have to prove yourself every day. It's like the not self theme of itself kind of starts to dissolve.
That that actually sounds very accurate. Also, I would say for my completely open spleen, it's like that intelligence has really kicked in, and I've just found myself really dialing into self-care routines and finding resources to take better care of my body and heal my body from the 30 years of trial and error. in a way that just wasn't coming together before, even though I really felt the need for that.
Yeah.
So that's been really awesome too. um, and yeah, I think a lot of lessons of my open route as well. I mean, it's not as open as those two, but I feel like the genius of that route and being able to see a bigger picture and structure things from a bigger picture and even like guide a process, that's starting to come online for me in a big way.
Hmm. So, because that is a very actually a different kind of design. In your route, you have so many activations, and somehow you would even think that that is more challenging because it's you, but at the same time, it's an open center, so it's always under the influence from like what's coming in. So, is like, yeah, I'm wondering. It looks for me like the route could be a challenge. So maybe can you speak a little bit about how the route has, you know, what it is, how that has been for you to have those activations, but still it's an open center, and what is shifting for you in that?
Right. So I think that I was definitely bumping into the fact that I have these hanging gates and that they're activating slash triggering different people in different ways, depending on, you know, their frequency, my frequency, just the happenstance of life and what the intention is of that moment. And also as a general theme, I feel like being in the body has been an interesting challenge for me. Because with this kind of really receptive mind that is more of like the rave, I feel like being in a concise physical vessel has been a bit of an alien experience, and it's taken these 30 years to build up the resilience and just the experience of knowing where my boundaries are, you know, where do I end and the other begin, and how to deal with just feeling so open to people in life and wanting to be involved and wanting to help everyone and wanting to connect, and just realizing and developing that inner sense of, you know, when to step away and when to not engage and when to slow down and when to feel okay about slowing down, because that nagging hurry 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 not self theme of the open route has definitely been there. Even in times when I know it's time to seek rest and tranquility, there's always that kind of pushing voice to do more and achieve more and accomplish more. And I've definitely been able to balance that out more recently.
Hmm. Yeah, when I look at your chart as well, I remember both Ra and Richard speaking about, you know, the trivian being, the new being. It's like we were animals, we lived from instinct, then we became human beings, then we lived from like the mind or the left brain, problem solving. Now we're purifying all the emotions that Richard speak about, you know, the shadow frequencies of turbulence and dishonor, weakness, conflict, reaction, victimization, desire, so that we can actually come in and take the life force and live from that life force, sublimating or circulating it up to the heart, knowing who we are, knowing where we're going, knowing what love is, and then expressing it. So it's like when I look at your design, you are the being of the future for 6. So it's like the soul is already that 6 line, and the body, the soul, and then you have this, you know, so it's like somehow I feel like there's a little bit of pressure on you to kind of show up as the role model for something that we haven't seen. And we can say, I know that Ra is saying, you know, we're going into the sleeping phoenix. That's the period where everybody's going to be so busy surviving, so that we're not even going to have time for each other or intimacy or anything. It's like, so it's kind of in one way in human design put even in a little bit of a negative way to like, what is this cross that is your, you know, that you have. And yeah, I'm one, you know, I feel like a little bit of that we can look at you and kind of anticipate part of what like humanity is going to be going through, and part of those trial and errors that we're all, you know, facing somehow.
Yeah, and I think that the definitely the perspective of the mind wants to try and predict how that's going to look in a certain way based on the past and our survival, just foundational survival patterns that we rely on as an intelligence, you know, as a species to survive, and it wants to project based on that. But I really feel like what's coming for the sleeping phoenix is maybe more of a mellowing out of humanity rather than this like super motorized energized need to be that 2034, you know, constant activity. I think it might actually be almost unavoidable for humanity to like not hear the guidance, not hear the stirring of the spirit or feel that spiritual inclination towards being guided not from the mind but from this unity consciousness that's birthing through the 55th gate, and this greater understanding that we are not separate beings. And I think that if there is upheaval, which I mean, that's always kind of happening throughout history, it's going to be things that serve to realign us to the foundational, um, just what really matters. And I think it's going to be, as much as it's going to be a spiritual revolution, it's going to be one that takes us more into the realm of really embracing our ordinariness and really embracing the very like just simple things in life that make life good, and finding that sense of abundance, like with the 55, in those simple natural human truths that have always been there. And I think when we've been seeing the rise of like indigenous cultures and returning to the land, it's like those are the first kind of stirrings I feel in the collective conscious or unconscious of what we're going to re-embrace to kind of balance this whole civilization out.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I love that. And I'm wondering, because in the Gene Keys we say that the 59, that this is part of the challenge to have. That's what we look, it's the earth in the moment you were born, and this is the key that has to do with this honesty, intimacy, and transparency. And I like, it's a little bit like what I'm hearing about, you're kind of at like a new honesty coming through in how we live, like what the truth is, what really matters. And I see, when I look at your G center, it looks like, you know who you are, you know where you're going, you know what love is. And I'm wondering, have what has been the struggle for you in having that 59 in your, as your biggest challenge? The fourth line is about many times anxiety and numbing the heart, and the 59 can be about not being able to, express your truth. Can you tell us a little bit? Because I think a lot of people that have this, these keys, or even the whole incarnation cross, are going to watch, so that we can understand like how it can feel or look in somebody's life.
Yeah, totally. This one's been super interesting for me because it's like right when I think, oh yeah, I'm transparent, I've got this. It's like, shoo, oh no, here we go for another spiral. So for me, as an open emotional center, open solar plexus person, I have this affinity to being like a kind of confidant, an emotional confidant for people. So that's a big part of the work I do, and it's a beautiful part of me, but it's also been something that's been kind of karmic in a sense, because almost any time that I've joined to be a part of a community or a collective of some kind, it's like I become the confidant for so many different energies. And then it's like I'm being asked to hide this thing from that aspect and hide that from that and hold that secret and keep, and it's like it always comes into this place where it inevitably creates friction, which I think is like the 6 on the other side of it. And um, that ability to be completely transparent doesn't feel supported by the tribe, because it's like if you're not holding up this bargain and that bargain and that bargain, then that person's going to get mad at you. And then I'm manifesting that anxiety of like, whose secret do I hold, like do they know, it just becomes this kind of crazy political headache.
Wow.
And that's definitely been a big part of me leaving a lot of communities. As you can see, I have a separatist trajectory there.
Yeah.
And it's been really tough because as much openness as there is in my chart, and there's a lot of beauty in that level of deep sharing with people, it can inevitably get ugly when people's egos get involved, and even if my ego gets involved, because then I'm defending myself, and it gets really murky.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely still learning through my challenge, of course.
Right. I'm looking also, like you're saying, the karmic part of it, having that 13 in your North Node, which also is like that one, the listener, the one that gets all the secrets. And it's like you're already kind of taking on that. But then I can kind of like, just like playing with the chart, you're like thinking, okay, but then on the other side is the reaction of the 49. And it's all that part of the, the whirlwind, the codon ring about victimization, reaction. Like, so, it's like, it's all this puzzle that you are, but I think very interesting, because I remember you and I speaking like a year and a half ago, and I was already feeling, often feel that with 6-2s or 4-6s. I'm like, this person is actually, it's still a third line, but there is still, and there's already another wisdom than if it was like, if that 6 line wasn't there. It's like the 6 line is there, but it's, you know, it's still, it's always there. And that's why I often feel like, even as before 30, there is, you know, there's still so much life experience that has had to be kind of compressed into the 28, 31st years in order for us to like have that clarity, maybe, you know, that we're supposed to have, to be able to start to discern and all that.
Oh,
So
yeah, I almost feel like birth was kind of like being kicked off the roof and then just kind of landing in the midst of all of this. And there's like a remembrance of that perspective. And there's almost like I can think of my earliest memories kind of thinking like, what are they doing? Why are they doing things like this? Like, are you crazy? And then having to completely integrate the way that things are and live in that, in the world and with people, and you know, essentially make compromise to make my way. And now that I'm coming to the roof again, I'm feeling like it's made me stronger. It's made me more empathetic. Like in that 13th North node, it's like I've really become more intimate with the human condition and human suffering and what people don't give themselves, what people take from themselves, and what people um yeah, the whole victimization process basically of how we fall prey to our own egos and our own subjective judgments of life.
right. I wanted to ask you something also, because I see you have the first gate or gene key both on both sides of your Pluto, and it's also what we call the core wound. And that is, I was speaking with Matthew last week, which, you know, it's like he had his in his evolution, and that is depression or entropy, or like, you know, feeling like there is no energy at all. So how have you, like, can you say something about that first gate or gene key, and how you think it's part of your, maybe part of your transformation, or what you are helping to transform in the human, you know, unconscious in the Pluto, and also for you more kind of karmically, what that first gate, how that has showed up for you.
Mm, yeah, that first gate's very interesting. It's like in my contemplation of the gene keys, that to me has been one of the most mysterious. You know, you can listen to the audios, you can read, you can find more resources and discussions, and still it may not fully show itself to you until you've contemplated it really in your way, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it is definitely deeply tied to the masculine. So obviously it's this super yang energy. And I think part of it being my core wound was maybe not being connected to my masculine coming in like early on, and just kind of feeling that that whole experience of being masculine was alien to me and that I didn't want to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So just identifying more with the feminine, finding safety with the feminine. And as I built my business and took the things that made sense to me more and put them into form, those are the main beings I'm working with, are the feminine. So as I'm kind of cresting into this role model and the sixth line and just this kind of maturity, I'm finally able to approach my masculinity in a way that doesn't feel intimidating to me, or it doesn't feel just awkward or just alien to me. And I think it's taken kind of getting up, you know, like in that trial and error way, having to find the strength out of my own entropy. So, you know, many times to really understand that I have access to that energy, and I just have to, you know, at times surrender that it's not there, and then but know that that's not the ultimatum, and to just remember that it is a mutative energy. It is one that has its own timing, that's independent of my will.
Yeah.
And it's, I feel like it's finally arriving for me, so it's super refreshing because I'm starting to like embrace that and integrate that into my life, and I feel like it's giving me new vitality. It's bringing a new freshness into my being, which feels amazing.
Mhm. Yeah, and somehow the 55, that is spirit, and like the first is the spark. It's always was even like if the 55 and the one somehow are, can work together or can like take you into like the lower, really lower frequencies together as well. So I feel like there can be, your life's work and your vocation, of course, is like connected also somehow.
Yeah, and I think in a weird way, yeah, they are kind of similar gene keys. I don't maybe necessarily know exactly how right now, but something about them feels because there's a regenerative quality to both in a
Hmm.
sense, and one that definitely is dependent on cycles that are out of our hands. And at the same time, both present this kind of promise for regeneration, rebirth, and that phoenix like energy that I think is really needed right now in humanity as we kind of reach the outer reaches of like our pessimism about how the way that we've built civilization through the mind and the patriarchy and the masculine, how that's dying away. I think the 1 and the 55 can work together very well to regenerate what's left of the divine masculine in service to this new iteration of just how we do everything. And I think I'm definitely going to be a part of that, so I'm excited to see what arises around that.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for putting that in words that are understandable, I'm wondering, can you tell us a little bit more what you do, what your work is, or, maybe the process that you take people through so we understand a little bit more about
Yeah. So for a long time, I just did readings for people. And that came about very naturally because I had been doing human design in my own life, as my experiment for 7 years. And then it just kind of started happening, and people were like, hey, you should do this. Like, this is really cool. Like, so I just kept going with it. And then I actually found Gene Keys around that time. So I had no idea about Gene Keys before. And I've been doing human design for so long. And I was like, wow, this is actually more my language. Even though I love the mechanics and the kind of stark precision of human design, this more romantic language of the psyche really started to resonate with me. And um, so I just, I was doing readings and contemplating the gene keys, and kind of I would go through the transits every week and just listen to the audios and go on walks and just kind of soak it in. And little by little I would get these inspirations to work in the gene keys with people who were showing up for human design readings, and I wouldn't even tell them, I would just throw tidbits in there about the different frequency bands and the shadow and the language. And that process of the evolution between the shadow, the gift, and the city really resonated with people,
that.
like, who thought they wanted a human design reading, but they were actually getting there was a visible spark there with gene keys. So I decided to combine them in like a coaching container. And what I realized was one-on-one, one-time readings were great. They are working great for people, but I knew that my strength is to guide someone through a process and hold space for them and get them from A to Z, like all the way.
Mhm.
So that's what I did. I created this container called integration coaching, and I kind of just launched it and put it out there without a lot of like effort, basically, and people showed up for it. So I've been guiding people through this 3-month container of the integration coaching, and it's intensely beautiful the kind of breakthroughs that people are having using both systems together, working week by week, working through the transits of the sun, contemplating that, and then having sessions, every once in a while interspersed in between. And it's just really beautiful how deep we've been able to go and just get to the source of a lot of codependency and lack of self-worth, and really find like, whoa, that was what it was all about for that person. And then also empower them with a new way to think about themselves and see themselves that's completely separate from all of that experience, and kind of giving them this kind of rebirth into possibility and creativity and self-intimacy. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. It's been really great. And next up, what I'm going to be doing is helping people like marry that understanding of their design and their gene keys with business. So just creating a really unique and personalized platform for them through the keys that are already in their design.
Well, I feel like everything is, it's like synchronicities and aligned, because my path with these systems have been quite similar, because I can't do one without the other. I feel like, they are energies, they are the same activations. One is more left brain, one is more right brain, but they are like, these are systems that are brothers or sisters, or they are together. And then also what's been showing up so much for me lately with people is that you cannot take personal life and professional life and say, I want to work either with this or with this. Like, once your vocation is starting to fuel your life's work, it's like, you can't separate anymore. Like, it's everything is one fire. And
Yeah.
that is also why business becomes like, it's your mission. It's not only, it's like your mission is going to go out in the world and serve the world. That is why it's like, it's all connected. And that you are also, even like creating something, because one thing is to just, okay, that's where it goes, but to also actually consciously create a container where we already know that that's where we're going to go. I love that. And, the kind of being always like on the edge of evolution. What is needed? What are we ready for? Where are we as humanity? What are we unlocking right now? Where is the sun? All these things, like you're saying, working with the transits and taking people through a process. And the sixth line that wants to see basically, the process from the beginning to the end, all the colors of the rainbow, like all these things, like it's really exciting.
Yeah. And I think that there's definitely a potential revolution in terms of how we deal with our value, how we deal with money, economy, and how that runs the world. I think as more of us wake up to our true nature, or at least engage in the process of awakening and take more seriously the unique gifts that we bring into the world, that's just creating more ripples of alignment through the world. And if it goes down to the level of where we're sourcing our income from and how that vibration can change through more aligned work and more aligned business, like that to me is super satisfying. I have 6 planets in Capricorn. Like, I want to see those tangible results, but in that spirit of perfection and evolution of the 6th line. So I hope that happens. I'll be working in service to that for sure.
Yeah, and just to kind of to mention again, you have the sixth line in your culture, which is the system. So it's like you're caring about that whole system, what is happening, not on with the world, with the universe, maybe even. So it goes together with what you were just saying, and to see it unfold for all of us, which
Mm-hmm.
is, yeah. Mm. And then I see, so let me see if there's anything else. I mean, I wonder, freedom is the key word. So the 55 is the only gene key that has freedom twice. It's the gift and the city. So it's very unique in that sense. Um, and I guess, I mean, that would be my question, like, freedom from somebody who has the 55 as life's work in the fourth line, kind of through the heart, what is freedom? And basically also, what's the difference between freedom as a pathway and freedom as, I don't know, a city, and how is that connected to what you do? Like, how is that something that you infuse through your work? How do you relate to freedom? I guess is maybe more tangible question.
Right. So freedom is definitely a little tricky to talk about. But I think the way that I relate to it fundamentally is this idea that if we understand who we are, what our design is, for instance, or what our gene keys are, just what this incarnation is about for us, and then we accept that, we deeply accept that, embrace that, and even over and above, like, love that, learn to love who we came here to be, then we're free, because we're living within the supposed limitation of this physical form and what it's here to do and what it's capable of. And then we free up so much of our psychic energy by going to that level of acceptance. And when we do that, our consciousness, I think, has a stronger vessel to come through. Like it's a clearer, stronger vessel. And to just be able to live life, see life, watch life, and also watch the self and just kind of be that witness or that passenger consciousness that Ra talks about is freedom. And then I think as a pathway, it's been a lot of learning how to create that also in just 3D terms, like how to really live a free life and how to resist, in my experience at least, how to resist the pressures of the world that want to take our freedoms away, because there are so many systems in place in our current reality that rob us of freedom. And I think one of my heart's strongest prayers, and just a non-negotiable factor for me in my existence, has been like, I'm not going to feed into a system that either robs me of my personal freedom or is doing that to someone else. And of course that's hard to do 100% in this world in the way it is, but it's always been like a guiding like rule and a guiding light for me, is keeping that idea that I'm not here to just, I think you posted something about this today, you're either going to be a brave human or a mediocre slave or something. And I couldn't agree more. It's like there have been so many really, tough choices that I've had to make, and saying no to things and walking away from things because in my heart I knew they were not serving my freedom.
Mm.
And that's really been the path for me, is having strong boundaries against what my conditioning would tell me I had to do in order to survive, or in order to create harmony in my environment. So freedom a lot of times has been just freeing myself. And I think because I've, regardless of the trial and error and the learning and things blowing up and failed relationships or whatever, I've never let go of that. Like I've never compromised that. And it's always been one of my biggest values. So it's naturally something in that fourth line way of, this is something I want for everyone. And this is something I wanted for, my parents when I saw them, slaving away when I was growing up. And it's woven into my soul, that instinct to find freedom, create freedom, and protect the human spirit from the things that would threaten that. And then on the acidic level, I think there's so many other dimensions to our consciousness that we still are working our way into. And that kind of freedom will be experienced, it'll be lived. And it really doesn't matter if we talk about it now or not, because it's coming, and days like this, where we were talking earlier, where the Schumann resonance goes 10 times its normal level, obviously something is happening on a deep genetic level that's um, opening up pathways for us to experience our consciousness in new ways. And I think we'll be able to taste that come 2027 or even sooner.
Right. Yeah, I was speaking with Alicia yesterday, and she was saying, I have been speaking with some of my teachers. I've been like, why does it have to take 7 years to change all the cells? Like, I don't think you can. What about quantum leaps? Come on. And then she was saying yesterday, no, I think it can go faster. So I don't know, maybe, how do you feel? Like, does it take 7 years, or can we decondition faster?
I think, Richard says in the first chapter, like the intro to the Gene Keys, your DNA is a wormhole, basically. It's a funnel for transdimensional light and energy. And I think that Ra was somebody who didn't want to take any risks in creating any kind of like fairy dust promises for people, because he knew that the power and the reliability of his system depended on it being um, empirical and something that you could experiment with, and that was logical and that was mechanical. So I think that it's great to trust that 7-year boundary. And I also think that because our DNA is made of the same stuff as all quantum reality, there are definitely shortcuts that can be taken. And I don't think they're all as obvious as it might seem. And I think that, it's not just plant medicine. It's not just these things that are really big right now. I think self-intimacy is actually one of the biggest quantum leapers. Like if you can really get in there and love yourself and feel your deep spiritual needs, I think you can go to sleep one way and wake up maybe a kind of different person if you really can get in there with your heart and your soul. So I think, yeah, self-love is the quantum leap. And you don't need anything else. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like hearing that with somebody with you have completely open will center, and that has to do with worthiness. I also have that. And I felt in my journey that once I get that, once I don't fell like fall into the feeling of I'm not enough, that's like actually when I can feel my DNA activating. I can feel everything starting to open up. But that open center, it can be a curse or a blessing, but it's really like that is pointing us so much. And then when we can take that open center and kind of turn it around and reflect that, to somebody we work with or somebody that is just in our aura, there's such a, yeah, like for me, there is such a power in when that happens, when we can mirror, like when we can role model, even probably self-love. That's when our DNA change, and when the DNA of humanity is starting to change as well.
Absolutely. And I've noticed, as I've gotten deeper on my journey of self-love, it definitely comes through the aura. Like as a six line being, it's definitely transmitted through the aura. And it's almost like, I don't know, I just see people feeling it, even though I'm not talking to them. It's not like a formal interaction, but it's just like a little woof. And I don't know, it's just something I've been noticing lately.
Hmm. Yeah, and maybe some last words to our, sleeping phoenixes out there. Like any advice, anything that any last words that you would like to share.
Yeah, sleeping phoenixes, you were born with the master key, but you have to walk the path of victimization to find your freedom. So understand that even when you can't see outside of what feels like you being the victim, that it's a path, and it's one step at a time. And the 55 is an extreme key. It's the highest highs and it's the lowest lows. And embracing those lows and really embracing your capacity to transmute however you transmute, whether that's through creativity or whatever it is for you. I think that's one of the strongest tools for a sleeping phoenix, is understanding the capacity to transmute, and also understanding that it's all you. So ultimately, when we feel our most victimized or our most subjective and our most reactionary, um, it's all you pushing you towards freedom. Even the people that seem like they're screwing you over, double crossing you, whatever. It's all just you pushing yourself towards your ultimate freedom, which is your birthright and your destiny. So even the worst things, embrace them, because no one knows what you're truly capable of. You have a mutative gene key. Who knows what you can do, what you can transform from and into? Only you can discover that. So embrace that unusual power that you have this lifetime.
Wow. That's, yeah, I feel like, wow. I hope, good we have this recorded. I think this is super, super helpful. And it's a very much more like deep and broad way than, when we read about this incarnation cross. It's like busyness and spirit. What does that even mean? So thank you so much for, making it like developing what this cross is about, and how a life path through this cross can feel and look, and what the possibilities are.
Yeah. And thank you for holding space for all these discussions and conversations. And I've learned so much from you just from watching the way that you do Gene Keys. And just thank you. It's amazing what you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you for today.
Yeah, of course.